Well, we're going to talk with Oliver Hunter now, and very likely we'll continue talking also to Bill Ford as the two gentlemen want to interact with each other in this discussion about their experiences in World War II. So, Oliver, would you like to go ahead and get started here?
Well, yes, I'll answer your first question here. Is circumstances of my entering the military. Well, it was either be drafted or join the Navy in June of 1943. And I had been to IU for 1 year, and at that time they were practically closing up the school and turning it all over to the military. So I volunteered in June of 1943 for the Navy and went to boot camp up Great Lakes about a week later, which was really an eye-opener for me. I hated every day of boot camp, but I lived through it. And then after boot camp, finally got through with that, why they assigned to sonar school in San Diego. And I was pretty small, even for my age then. I was 18, but I was only about 5'5" or 5'6", and weighed about 115. So they made me shore patrol officer on the train, going.
You're gonna get the others in line.
Yeah, right. So I persevered, and thank goodness I didn't have any trouble. But they did. The other occupants of the train got awfully mad. We didn't have any air conditioner or anything, and it was hot summer. And in Tucson, Arizona, they parked our train right next to a train that was filled with fertilizer. And then when you woke up in the morning, it smelled terrible. And the other guys thought that was my fault.
You were supposed to take care of it.
I got in trouble over that. So, but by the time I got to San Diego and the sonar school, which was kind of nice because it was nice and warm and cool at night, and we got to go out on a lot of different type boats and so forth. And then after getting sonar school, I went to radar school in San Francisco, which was really wonderful for us that were lucky enough to go to that school, Treasure Island, because we spent every night in Chinatown in San Francisco, and because we were able to get a beer in Chinatown underage. I don't know whether you want that.
You were what, in 18 or 19?
18, yeah. But anyway, and after that, after about a month in school in San Francisco, then we were transferred to the ship, which was just being commissioned in Seattle, Washington. And we got to know Seattle, Washington pretty well too at night, because that's all we had to do. We were at liberty every night. And then we go back to the ship to sleep.
What kind of ship was it?
It was a destroyer.
Destroyer.
Longshaw was the name, and it was 559 was the number on it. And we were commissioned in November of that year. And then we took our shakedown cruise, what they call a shakedown cruise on a new ship. They always had that, and from Seattle to San Diego on holiday week. So Christmas didn't amount to too much that year, but I remember we got to San Diego and everybody was seasick. Hardly any of the guys on the ship had been to sea, and we had rough weather going down the west coast. So about everybody was so seasick they couldn't eat Christmas dinner at all. We didn't have any Christmas dinner.
Now, this was what year, 43?
43.
Okay.
And so we finally reached San Diego, and I thought, boy, now we're going to get off this thing and have a good time on land. I drew guard duty that night and had to stay on the ship on New Year's Eve. That was one of the worst New Year's Eves I'd ever spent. Okay, we started from overseas to Hawaii from Seattle after our shakedown cruise, and it took us about a week to get there, and much different than the transportation of these days. And we had a little few repairs in there, and the war was getting a little warmer now in the Pacific, so we were hustled out to Marshall Islands. I can't think of the Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands, yeah. And that was just been taken over by the United States after very much bombardment, so you could see they were still disposing of the bodies of the Japanese, and it was still hardly a tree was standing on the whole island due to the bombardment. So from there we went to another Marshall Island and patrolled that and secured it and took that over from the Japanese. And from there, I think we went down to Palau, and on the way, we initiated into being a shellback.
You cross the international.
Yeah. And some of the guys, of course, in shellback, you're supposed to wear an earring in your ear to show everybody you're Asiatic. No, I didn't think that was quite necessary, so I never did get the earring. Anyway, from Palau, we had our first naval battle at Palau, because we were in Palau Harbor and the Japanese kamikazes made it pretty rough for us, but fortunately they did not hit us at all, but we did knock down 2 or 3 of them on that battle. And from there, we went to Guam, and Guam had just been taken by the United States, so we had to flesh out a few gun emplacements of the Japanese, but that was not very difficult to do.
Well, actually, then you didn't really get involved with hunting too many submarines, even though you were a destroyer.
Well, I was a sonar man on a destroyer, and our duty was to guard the aircraft carriers, really. Mm-hmm. We were on guard duty mostly. We did hit what we thought were a couple of submarines, but they turned out to be dead whales by the time they came up. So we really weren't too successful on that. But it was interesting. They called us ping jockeys because they always relied on the echo to see whether there was anything metal or not under there. Anyway, then from Guam we went into the South China Sea, which took us, we were bombarding thank you, yeah, at the moment. It was Hong Kong. Hong Kong.
Heard of that place.
Yeah. And from Hong Kong Island, we went over to what used to be called Formosa, which is now Taiwan, and bombarded that, shelled that area, ready to get the troops to invade it. And then we went down to Saigon. And we're just 24 miles from Saigon, which was, I didn't know Saigon from any place in those days, but later on the later war, why I would have loved to have seen that place when it was whole, because I guess it was very beautiful. Anyway, then we went to, we did have help in the invasion of the Philippines, like Luzon and Mindanao, and that was really, we got into a number of battles there because we were with the carrier, which was sunk, and we were guarding it. A big battle, I remember that. Anyway, kamikaze sunk the aircraft carrier, and we were involved in it very much so. But one of the saddest things I can remember about aircraft carriers and the pilots, after the big aircraft carrier was sunk, the pilots were trying to get the planes off before it sank, and one of them didn't make the incline off of the aircraft carrier, and he landed about, and parachuted out of it, and landed about 20 yards from our ship, and we were trying to rescue him, and the parachute pulled him under, and you could just look over and see his face. And it was a terrible sight to see. Knowing that he was going to drown, that parachute was going to bring him down. Anyway, that was one of the sad memories of the China Sea battles. From there, we went to Okinawa. Okinawa was and that battle started on the April the 1st, which happened to be Easter Sunday.
Now this was
45. And the Philippine action was in 44.
Okay.
And this was in April 1st, 1945. On Easter Sunday, the Battle of Okinawa began. And we were among the first to go in, again, to protect aircraft carriers and things like that, but we were closer into the shore, and we lobbed our 5mm shells into the gun placements that they had, that they rolled out from the caves. They were on railroad tracks, and they rolled them out from the caves. And then when they got through shooting, they rolled them back in. So they
those were probably pretty heavy guns, isn't it?
Oh, they were
Large caliber.
very heavy. Yeah. Yeah, they matched the guns that we had, the big guns that we had on the ship. And we bombarded them for 2 months. In April, we averaged about 4 hours sleep a night. And in April and May, April to the middle of May, we were at it every night, bombarding them, softening them up for the land invasion of the troops. And so on the night before, on the night of the 17th, we had bombarded, May the 17th, we had bombarded them all night. And we were pretty logged out, really, after all this. And the ship ran up on a reef and got stuck on a reef about a mile off of shore of the Okinawa Bay, Naha Bay it was called. And I distinctly remember we had pancakes that morning for breakfast. And for many, many years, I didn't eat pancakes. Couldn't stand to look at them. And then I joined the Kiwanis. I had pancakes, dinner, breakfast. So I finally learned to eat them through that again, but it was 40 years difference in the middle. Anyway, because you could think after we got hit, we were hit by short guns from the Japanese. They rolled around on these rails and plunked them in. We got hit. I remember the first shell that came over landed back at us, and the second shell hit the bridge, which my station was on the bridge, but I happened to be down in the mess hall at the time eating pancakes. So, the bridge was gone by the time, of course, General Quarters was called, and by the time I got up there wasn't a living soul on the bridge. I can remember all the dead bodies just strewn all over, and so I knew that wasn't a place to stay.
And you were still how old?
I was 19.
19 now.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And
Growing up fast.
yeah, so I started down the ladder from what used to be the bridge down the ladder onto the main deck, and another shell hit us right midship, and that hit an ammunition storage place. So the whole ship just blew up, and the oil caught fire, and it blew me back by the stack, the smokestack in the midship, and so I was picking myself up off the deck, and on the way I saw some terrible sights. One of my friends was holding his intestines in like this. His stomach had been ripped open, and the doctor on the ship had his head severed, and it was a terrible, terrible sight to see. But I was kind of dazed by the time I picked myself up off the deck, and then by that time another shell came by and hit the smokestack in back of me and threw me out into the water. The percussion of it threw me out into the water, and so immediately I did take off my life jacket because it was the current of the water was taking me back into the ship, which is burning oil all around it and exploding. So I finally got the life jacket off and was swimming against the current, and I saw a piece of debris with a man on it, hanging on it, so I went over there to join him with it, and then I found out that he had already died. And so I took him off the debris, and in the meantime, the Japs were shooting at us with artillery from the beach. And you can see all around you these bubbles coming up. So, but anyway, I was very, 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 very fortunate. And it's about an hour later why the Mississippi, which was one of the battleships that we were guarding, had sent boats in for us, little light boats, and they picked me up and took me out of that mess. And I do remember they had rope ladders from the side of the battleship down to where we were supposed to climb the rope ladders. But my leg, I had no feeling in one leg whatsoever, so I couldn't climb that rope ladder at all. So they put me on a boatswain, what they call a boatswain chair, which was a rope thing, and on board, they lifted you up like that. So I finally got up on the main deck of the battle wagon, and then they took the ones that were rescued by the battle wagon down to their sick bay, and we stayed there for maybe 2 or 3 days. We had no clothes, no nothing, because everything was taken. I mean, no identification, no, just the dog tags, all we had. So we're all in hospital. They gave us hospital gowns to wear because all our clothes we had on were just oil soaked. It's terrible shape. So that was that sick day was kind of bad in my memory because so many of my friends died from burns on that sick day.
Weren't very many survivors of the...
There were, out of 300, there were 179 casualties. That was died and wounded, so there were about 100 died, yeah. Mostly from burns. But anyway, then they put us on a hospital ship, which was, after all that, it was, I can still remember, it was just like heaven, going on that hospital ship, getting out of that place. And all the doctors and the nurses were ultra nice to us and everything. They took us to Guam. And Guam, after we stayed in Guam for about 3 weeks, then Guam was now occupied by the U.S., but they still had Jap snipers coming up to the hospital. It was a temporary hospital every night, so we could not go anywhere except had to stay in the hospital. And then, finally, we got word that they were going to transfer wounded to Honolulu. So that was great. And on the way to Honolulu, we stopped at Kwajalein, and my brother happened to be supply officer for the Air Corps in Kwajalein. So I asked a nurse on duty on the medical plane if she might see a Bill Hunter's around the base. And sure enough, he was on duty. So he climbed aboard and was kind of surprised to see me strapped down strapped down on the plane there because he hadn't even known I'd been in Okinawa. So anyway, and then from Kwajalein to San Francisco, or Kwajalein to Hawaii, which we were taking us to a hospital in Hawaii, we hit an air pocket. And now on this ambulance plane, everybody was strapped into well, not bunks, but yeah, kind of bunks, except the nurse and the doctor. There were 2 nurses and the doctor. So we hit this air pocket and we went down about 300 feet. And man, everybody was tossing, but we were all right. The guys on the bunks, but no, the nurses and the doctor really took a punishment. But they lived. we all got to lie sooner or later. And then stayed there, and then, well, that was another experience. My legs started getting infected from the shrapnel that was in it by this time, because they hadn't done anything. And they moved me from the regular ward to the ward where they amputee ward. And dumb me, I didn't know. I thought that was all right, any ward. But I didn't realize at the time that they were deeply thinking about amputating that leg because gangrene had set in. Anyway, but fortunately they decided to operate and try to remove the shrapnel before they amputated, which they did, and that's why I still have a leg today to stand on.
It was close.
Yeah, it was close. I didn't realize this until after I got out of the amputee ward. But now I think it's quite fortunate. Anyway, then we were transferred to Oak Knoll, hospital, and I stayed there for about 3 months. That was really nice because we got liberty every night, and the people around there was in Oakland, and it was very, very nice, and they were very nice people, and they took us all, they just picked us up. All we had to do is get ourselves out on the highway, and they'd pick us up and take us where we wanted to go. And I remember one night, an oil company had taken over a nightclub and to entertain us all and everything. And where we lived was a converted golf course, and it was kind of hard for me to maneuver on crutches because it was hilly. But I made it. All right. And the hills of San Francisco, the streets of San Francisco were kind of hard to navigate too on crutches. But I got used to those crutches. See, I was on them for about 6 months.
Better than the alternative, wasn't it?
Oh my, yes, and I could even dance on those crutches a little bit. Well, because I found a girl that her dad had a nightclub. The arrangement was very nice. Anyway, then from there, from that paradise, I was transferred down to Memphis. And that wasn't too great because that was 20 miles out in the country. But again, they didn't know what to do with us. I was healing up. I was practically off my crutches most of the time.
Now this would have been...
This was in August.
August of 45?
August of 45.
Okay.
And all they did was either send us home or send us on liberty for the night or send us home for 10 days.
Well, this would have been close to the end of the war then.
It was because on my 30-day overseas leave from Memphis, I was home on VJ night. And I was very, very excited and happy on VJ night. And I had a date, and I never will forget this. My date, I was 20 and my date was 19. And we went to the Grill Cafe to celebrate, which was on the east side of the square, that bar. And I was in uniform, and I was told I was too young to have a drink. So, but my 19-year-old date could get a drink. So after that, I got a little perturbed.
What did you do for your country after that?
So I didn't get a drink that night. Well, not from there. Not from there. But anyway, after that, after I came home, I then went back and forth all the time. But I finally got out on December the 20th, 1945. I was given a medical discharge. And that was one of the happiest days of my life. That I came home, and was going to surprise my folks. No, when on my 30-day leave. 30-day leave is when I came home, and on a surprise. I hadn't been home for two and a half years, and I was going to surprise my folks. And so I came down from Indianapolis. I went to Indianapolis on a train from Memphis and came down on a bus. And crossing the courthouse yard, I had this great big sea bag, and I had lost so much weight doing hospitalization. I weighed about 120 again. And here comes Judge Raymond's office and some woman from the clerk's office out and walked me home. I knew we'll forget that. That was wonderful. And anyway, so but my mother wasn't home. So I went down to the bookstore. She finally got there later. And anyway, finally got out, as I say, on the 20th of June, 20th of December. And I don't know whether you remember Bill Turner or not. You do,
Oh,
don't you?
yeah.
Well, Bill and I were very good friends, and he had been out previous to that. So, gotten out of the airport previous to that. So this was on Friday. I got home, I think, on Saturday. We decided to go to Batesville, down to the Sherman House, and we were both 21 at this time. And so everything went kind of peaceful. and lo and behold, I won't name him, but this guy was from Greensburg, wanted to ride home. He was kind of drunk, but we told him we'd bring him home. So little did we know that he had picked up this suitcase from this guy that was checking in the Sherman House. And he brought that home with us.
He stolen it then?
He stole it. He took it.
Took
He
it.
was drunk. Took it. And so we didn't pay much attention. And the next day, which was Sunday, we were having Sunday dinner in the dining room for a change. And who pulls up? Bill Turner in the back seat of a state cop's car. And the state cop comes to the front door and knocks. I want to know what we've done with that man's suitcase. That he was a railroad detective and he had a gun in there. Anyway, I explained it that as well as I could, and my folks didn't appreciate it very much. But anyway, we didn't have to go anywhere.
That's good.
They believed us. But I know, remember my dad said, well, we look forward to you coming home, but I don't know. Now, it's getting too exciting. But that's about my tale.
An interesting one. You know, I think people just don't realize some of the difficulties that you people went through just as a matter of course, just to stay alive. I mean, how long did it seem like this was going on when you were in the water? And
Oh, eternity.
yeah,
Eternity, because I thought, well, now that next one, that's going to hit me.
yeah, it was
That's
just
gonna hit
a matter of time, wasn't it?
But I prayed a lot. I really did. And I guess my prayers were answered because here I am. Not in tip-top shape, but here I am anyway. And no, I think I've been very, very, very fortunate throughout my life. Had some close calls. But
They're repeated by thousands of young men too.
right, yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I lost a lot of good friends on that. Because I was in what they call the radio gang. Although I was not a radio person, I was a sonar, but I mean we were included in that gang, and that's where one of the shells hit right.
Same division.
Yeah, same division. Hit right smack bad, just knocked out everything in the radio shack. So
But you happened to be somewhere else at the time.
I was picking myself up off the deck in front of the smokestack at that time, getting ready to fly over the side. Yeah, I figured you might as well see the humorous side of it as well as anything else.
Yeah.
But you know, a funny thing, I read about this about other people too, but when I got home, I didn't want to say a thing about anything. All I wanted to do was have a good time.
And not think about it anymore.
I didn't want to think about it. In fact, for years, I pushed all this back in the back of my mind completely. As you can tell, I have to resort to this. But it just made life easier if you didn't think about those things. But now, in the last 10 years, I have give more thought to it. Well, Bill kind of made me by asking about and making booklets and things like this up, but really I preferred all those years not to even think about it. So when I got back, it was just about a month, and then I went back to IU and finished up there and went to pharmacy school. So I didn't want much time off. I didn't want to think. And I overdid that because I can't think of anything now anymore. But
How did you feel about the atomic bomb being dropped?
oh hell, I was all for it. I was all for it, naturally. I mean, you want to know the truth. But, you know, when I got here, you were talking about how do you feel about the Japanese now coming in. And it is true, it's a completely different generation. And my wife and I went over there in the 70s, I think, Tokyo and around. And I didn't know how I would react. I was really kind of nervous about going. But we had this chance to go. And I just made up my mind then, well, these people didn't have anything to do with that war, you know? But you know, a funny thing, a really strange thing happened. We were sitting in a hotel in Tokyo, and I was waiting on my wife. She was shopping or something. And this fella came up to me. He didn't look like to me, he didn't look like he was all there. But I guess it was. Anyway, he showed me a card, and he was a missionary. And he said, and I couldn't understand it because he was talking Japanese. And he says, but I did understand him. He said, you were at Okinawa. Yeah. And I said, yeah, I was. But couldn't even understand anything, but that really got to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
How would he have?
because how would he know, or why would he care, or anything? But he came up, but that was about the gist of the conversation, because I could not understand him.
How old was he?
I would say he would have been about 45 to 50 at that time, and I was about 55 to 60. He had a card, and it was in Japanese and English on the back of it. So that's why I knew he was a missionary in Okinawa. And he had come from Okinawa, and was staying at this hotel. But I couldn't, didn't know, but I always thought that was
Interesting.
pretty weird.
Yeah.
What strange things do that.